Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you've been following what I've been doing at least for a little while, you already know that I've recently purchased this old G500 that has a ton of issues. Well, actually I've purchased this thing 3 or 4 months ago, so it hasn't been that recently, but life happened, had some other expenses, and I wasn't able to actually get started on it. So anyway, that changes today. So I have a big box of parts, and we'll be doing quite a bit of work to the G-wagon. I also have some other parts on the way, bits and bobs for the interior, but that will be all in another video or videos, hopefully in the not too distant future. So before further ado, let's roll the intro. So like I said, the G500 does have a ton of issues. Most of them are engine related, so there are oil leaks, vacuum leaks, and just general maintenance that hasn't been really properly done on this vehicle. The cool thing is that even though I will be working on a G-wagon right now, since the engine in this thing is the Mercedes-Benz M113, so that's the plain, normal, naturally aspirated V8, no compressors, no stuff like that. This will actually be applicable to a lot of vehicles. The C-Class, so the C500, CLK 500, and the E-Class from this generation that had the V8, and the S-Class that had the V8. So all of them had this exact engine that has the G-wagon. So whatever you see me working on right now, it's also applicable to those vehicles. Not only that, but it's also partially applicable to the V6s, because they're pretty much the exact same engine, just with 2 cylinders missing. But anyways, so let's get started. Let's pop the hood, see what we got. I just want to show you that since I got the vehicle, I've put about 3,000 kilometers on it, and it's been decent. It's definitely low on power, but I think most of that can be explained by some of the maintenance items that have been neglected throughout the years, especially the last couple of years, that since this vehicle was imported from Japan to Europe. Yeah, so let me put you on a tripod so that you can see a little bit better what I'm doing, and let's get cracking. The first thing is to remove the engine cover. On these it's actually quite simple. Just pull up and out, and it comes right out. There are these tabs here all around, also one in the front, and they hold this piece of plastic here. Now removing the air boxes, all you need to do is basically pull on these ductings on either side. It may require a little bit of force if they haven't been removed for a long time, and then it is as simple as just pulling up and out. As you can see here in the front, there are these clips on either side, and there are also some in the back right here. On the other side, the one clip is missing, as you can see. Maybe we'll be able to find it. Yeah, I actually see it right there. Anyways, so we'll take that from the engine, put it back, and here are basically 2 air boxes. Let's put this on the ground, and we'll see that a little bit better. But before we do that, let me refresh your memory about the oil leaks here. It's pretty bad. As you can see, the valve covers, they're leaking quite badly here on the top, on the bottom side as well. When we remove those, I'll be able to show you more clearly, but see, this valve cover is also clearly been leaking here quite a bit actually. And yeah, it's broken. You can see here the gasket material is just falling apart. Anyways, all of that will get changed, and yeah, let's see about the the airbox. So these are the two airboxes. They are part of the engine cover. We have 1 and 2, and they hold the engine air filters. This is this clip that was missing. Looks exactly like these ones, and it's on the engine. It stayed there, so I have to take that, put it back here, and let's remove the 2 engine filters. See how they're looking. It's just a bunch of T30 screws here, 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 and here. Same on the other side, if I remember correctly. They are retained, so they stay with this. They don't come all the way out. But let's see. It's been a while since I've been working on an M113 engine. So yeah, let's start by removing the screws and see the condition of the filters. So I lied. The screws are actually T25s, all of them. So, and like I said, they are captive screws, so they won't come out. Just unscrew them a little bit and take the filter out. So let's see the condition of these filters. Oh yeah, they are quite dirty, and there's actually sand and other crap accumulated in here. Oh, the good thing is the filter was doing its job, so as you can see, it's all kind of dust and other particles are coming from them. Lint. Yeah, so we'll be replacing both of them. I have some new filters right here. These are from a company called Mapco. They are not OEM filters, but they're good enough, and they'll do the job. So yeah, let's see the other one. Should be pretty much the same condition as the other. This one is even dirtier, quite a bit actually. Dirty old filters. Make sure you clean any garbage out of these boxes before you put the new filters in. I have some soapy water with me, so clean everything up nicely, install the filters, and put the cover back together. And here's the difference. The old filter, quite dirty, from Mahle, made in 2019. You can see from the date stamp, and the brand new ones right here from Mapco. So let's put these guys back in. I'll quickly install these air boxes back to the cover, and we'll continue on doing the other maintenance items. Before we continue with the other things that are wrong with the engine, I remembered about this spaghetti of custom wiring that someone has been adding, and I really want to remove all of this garbage. As you can see, these inline fuses right here as well, this wiring, all of that goes to some custom lights probably that someone had at some point in the past. So I want to remove all of this garbage and just have a clear engine bay. So let's do this right now as well.
I try to breathe, the moon will rise and carry me, for I've loved and I have died. So I won't hold back, and you should know that no myself down to abyss. While I blame the world's neglect, then I shine right back again. So I won't hold back, and you should know that what's never gone, just like regrets.
Now I fished the wires. Let's remove this piece of insulation as well, and you can clearly see them hanging right here. Snakes of wires. Now let's see about removing this. Yeah, they destroyed the original thread and they put this garbage in here. So let's see if I can just, yeah, I can just pull these things out. Good. And all of this will be going to the trash. Now, with this finally removed, let's continue on. I have already changed the valve cover gasket on this side of the engine, and now I'm going to show you the procedure on how to do this on the other side. It's exactly the same, with a small difference that here, in order to get to this fastener right here, you need to unscrew and disconnect the fuel line. Make sure there's no pressure in the fuel system. If there is, some fuel will leak out. If there isn't, again, a little bit of fuel will leak out, just not as much as if there was pressure in the system. So be mindful of that. Other than that, there were some hoses here, connects right here, and another one that comes from here and connects underneath the mass airflow sensor. We'll be removing this in order to change the identical hoses on the other side. Just a little bit more different, but procedure is exactly the same. I'll list all of the necessary parts in order to do this in the video description below. So make sure to check that out if you're interested. So now let's move to the other side and see what's what. Now on this side of the engine, you can clearly see there was a lot of oil leaking, and the coils, especially this one, is covered with oil. So we'll need to remove everything, clean it up, change the gaskets, and we'll see how it is after that. Let me put you somewhere so you can see the entire process, and let's get cracking. The coils are held in with a T25 screw. So we'll need to start by unfastening all of them and removing them one by one. They also have an electrical connector on the top. You can either remove it now or after the coil is free. Your choice. I personally think it's a little bit easier to do when the coil is free, so you can wiggle it around and remove the connectors without damaging the wires. Same goes for the ignition wires that run here to the spark plugs. So I'll first go and unfasten all of these fasteners that hold these coils down, and we'll take it from there. Now all of the little screws are removed, and as you can see, it's a lot easier to wiggle out the electrical plugs now that all of these are free. Otherwise you risk damaging the wiring when you plug on it. Yeah, this one disintegrated completely because they're old and brittle. It's gonna be fine. I ain't too worried about it. Okay. some plastic pieces get wedged somewhere, make sure to remove them, because otherwise when you remove the valve cover, some of that garbage may go inside the engine and you don't want to do that. Now as you can see, there are two ignition wires going to each coil, and don't worry, they are labeled. So let me unplug some and I'll show you. So as you can see here, it's clearly stated A and B, and on the valve cover it's also stated A and B. So you shouldn't be able to mess that up. It's still possible, but if you follow what's written, the markings, you are not going to. So let's put this aside and remove the other ones. So now all four coils are removed, and we can see the wiring. Now Mercedes sells a specific tool to remove the spark plug wires. However, I don't have that tool, and I'm not going to be buying that tool. So I'll show you a way to remove these without actually using that special tool. The way to do that is to use a flathead screwdriver. So you just wedge it here, and then with just a little bit of force it just comes right out. So just put it right here, you get some grip here on the valve cover and pull the wire out. So we'll do that for all of the wires, and then we can continue on. With all of the wires removed, it's time to take out all of the E10. So these are inverted Torx 10 fasteners that hold the valve cover to the engine itself, and there are all around. Here there is one right here that also holds the dipstick, and there is also, this looks like a 10 that holds, this is for the transmission oil dipstick. Currently there is no dipstick here because this is only used when actually changing the transmission oil, so otherwise it has this little cover. Try not to lose it. So yeah, I'll remove all of these, this, and we also need to disconnect this hose right here. These tend to break because they get brittle with time, so I have purchased all of these, and I'm replacing all of these little lines also on the other side. They come here around the master flow sensor, which is in the back. I'll show you in a little bit when we get to that. So yeah, let's get started removing the fasteners. Also, one thing to note, these two here are going to be considerably longer than all of the other ones. All other fasteners are shorter, these will be longer. Same goes on the other side. The fasteners that are on the top that go through also this metal cover, they will be longer, everything else will be short. Now everything's unfastened and it's time to pull the valve cover. I just forgot this. Needs to be also removed. Now everything's all unfastened. This is also removed. Usually these are brittle. This one looks actually to be in good shape. I'll be changing it anyways. So yeah, it's time to pull this thing out. So I usually grab it then here and wiggle it. Came right out. And carefully slide it out of the way. Just like this. Now we can have a clear look in the engine. looks to be in decent order. Timing chain looks good. Yeah. No slop, slack, anything. Looks decent. Now we have to remove the gasket. Be very careful not to drop any of this garbage inside the engine. Has accumulated through the years, and that's basically it. I will clean everything up, and yeah, I'll put the new gasket in. The valve cover is back on, has a new gasket. It's not properly tightened up. I just put on the bolts to hold it in place. Now, there are two ways to do this. Some people like to take this thing off with the valve cover off, reseal it, put everything back in. The way I like to do it, especially since I'm kind of leaving the engine open, I put the valve cover back on, then I remove this thing, clean it up, reseal it. So yeah, if you're doing it as a DIY, you're working outside, you don't want to leave the engine open for too long, even if it's covered, so stuff can still find its way inside. So just remove the valve cover, change the gasket, put it back in as soon as possible. Now we need to remove this. There are two T25s holding it in. On the other side there's a similar thing to this, it's just a little bit bigger, and on that one there are three T25s, and yeah, just remove those. I will be using this small stubby wrench to do it because I just dropped my T25 somewhere in the engine bay in the front and I can no longer find it. That's a bummer. So quickly remove these. They don't need to be very tight. When you put them back in, just tight enough. It's not going to go anywhere, so it just needs to hold the silicone sealant. And make sure to use high temperature silicone, made to be used in automotive applications like engines, because if you use normal sealant, it will not hold up. These engines do get warm, especially during the summer, so yeah, of the same tool is also a good idea, like a best practice, because you will inevitably drop a tool which you need and without which you cannot complete a job. So have more of each tool. These sometimes are a bit stubborn to come out because the way you have to put silicone on the inside of these. I'll show you when we take it out. And as you can see, these how the little screws look like. And now we can just, usually it just pops out. In this case it doesn't want to do that, so we need to persuade it with the screwdriver. Oh yeah. So as you can see, you need to put some silicone here, here. So in the groove itself, I see here, that's why it was leaking. There's no silicone here on this part. It's missing. So it was leaking here in the top because it was improperly put in. But you will need to put some silicone all around these fasteners, otherwise it will leak out through the fastener itself, through the threads. And now we'll need to clean everything up nicely. I see there's some sludge, and yeah, that's pretty much it. This is what the top cover looks like now that it's cleaned up. Doesn't need to be immaculate, perfectly clean, But what you need to do is remove all of the gasket maker from the grooves. Actually, see, now I have a little spot here that I've missed on this corner. Make sure that everything's cleaned up, and then put a very thin bead of sealant inside of the groove and around all of these holes through which the fasteners pass through. Then you can slide it back in place. So this is the proper procedure to deal with this thing. This is now this piece with the silicone in the groove. As you can see, you don't need to go crazy with it, just a little bit is more than enough, because there is already a groove here and it just needs to seal that surface. You're not actually making an entire gasket on two flat surfaces, because there is a ridge here and a protruding part right here. So you can leave this to set for a minute or two, put it back in, tighten both screws, and then when everything's said and done, you can tighten the entire valve cover properly. The procedure to tighten the valve cover itself is you start from the middle on a crisscross pattern, and then you work your way around to the outside. So here, 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 here in the bottom, this side, and you get the idea. So from the middle, crisscross pattern. I will wait a couple of minutes for that to set up, put it in, put the two little T25 screws, and I will see you guys later when it's time to actually change all of these and remove the mass airflow sensor, because we'll need to do that in order to change all of these little hoses. Now removing the mass airflow sensor, it's quite easy. There's this clip, you just unclip it, remove this plastic bracket that goes all the way around it. Here is the clip, and here are the hoses connecting the back. I actually don't need to remove the mass airflow sensor completely. Here you can see where these hoses attach on either side. So it's just a matter of removing those, and yeah, I'll do that very quick, and I'll show you the next procedure. Here are the new hoses. As you can see, they're nice and malleable. These are the old ones, they're hard plastic. I also did get some of these fittings, because for example on this side you can see right here, this hose actually connects to the another one, smaller one on that side, and yeah, there's also another fitting right there that needs to connect into. So I did get all of them, and yeah, now it's a matter of just replacing these. These were the original hoses. You see here the Mercedes stamping and part number. The new ones are Febis, with the except for this one, which is an SKV. I wasn't able to find a Febi hose for this one, but all of the other hoses seem to be original, and that's why they're brittle and they will break. So this is hard plastic, this as well. So it's very good idea to buy all of these. They're not very expensive. I think they're $50 for all of them, including the little plastic fittings. So when you're doing this job, just get all of the hoses, because these will get broken. Having a broken hose will cause a vacuum leak, and your car is not going to run properly. So yeah, I'm going to put all of this back, and I will show you what to do next when it comes to doing this job. All of the new hoses are put back in place. Master airflow sensor is now put back in place. When you're putting it back in, there are these little tabs here on the other side as well, and these need to go into these grooves. There's one identical on the other side. These grooves are part of the intake manifold, and you'll know when it's sitting just right is when there is no gap here around the gasket. So this is the master airflow sensor. This is the little ducting that goes to the intake manifold. There needs to be no gap. It needs to be absolutely perfectly flush from the front and the back. If it's flush on the back but not at the front here, then it's not sitting right, and you need to rotate it a little bit, just wiggle it out, and yeah. So these hoses are now here correctly sitting on the hooks. There is also a hook here on the other side for the other hose, and I just want to show you here. This one is also properly connected. It connects underneath the master airflow sensor. It's super tight. I can't really show you because it's very dark, but when you are removing this, you will see where it goes. This one is also connected, needs to go through this hook, and there's also another hook that coming from this piece of plastic underneath, and it holds it up so it doesn't touch any part of the engine. This is what I was telling you about that I unscrewed. This is for the fuel line, goes to the fuel rail and the injectors. It's a 17 metric, so I just put that back in. So what we'll be doing right now is putting back the ignition wiring. I do have new ignition wires though, and we'll put those back in, put the coils, put the wiring, and see if the vehicle is actually going to run. I do also have spark plugs, new ones, all 16 of them, because there are 2 spark plugs per cylinder, so 8 cylinders, 2 spark plugs each, that makes 16. They haven't arrived yet. These are the new ignition wires that I got for the G-wagon. They are a complete kit. There are 16 of them, and they're from Magneti Marelli. They're not the OE for these cables, but yeah, these were very decently priced for what they are. Otherwise this kit is very expensive, and yeah, so we'll see. I'll get this unboxed, and hopefully these wires are the correct ones and they will work properly. So it's a new day, and I started with the spark plugs. The new spark plugs arrived, and I was very enthusiastic about changing them. So I already pulled up one of the plugs, and these are NGKs, the ones that were in the vehicle, and they look brand spanking new. So I'm doubting whether or not I should actually change these, because this one looks perfect. There is nothing wrong with this plug. It looks new, maybe changed in the past 10 or 20,000 kilometers of this vehicle. So I'll pull a couple more plugs, expect the condition. If the rest 3 or 4 plugs that I pull are just like this one, I'm not going to be changing them. I'll put these back in, and I'll change the spark plugs on a later date. It's just pointless throwing out perfectly good spark plugs. And the other ones that I bought, well, I'll keep them at hand, and yeah, if on a later date I decide to change them, or if there are any performance issues with the vehicle, I'll change them then. But yeah, this one looks brand spanking new. Like, there's nothing wrong with this plug. There's no soot, there's no oil, it's not worn out. Yeah, just one more thing. When it comes to spark plugs for the M13 and the M112 engines, they need to be properly gapped at 1 millimeter. Some of these actually came with 1.8 mil, but the proper gap is 1 millimeter for these engines. So yeah, let me pull a couple more plugs and let's inspect the condition of those. The good thing about the new wires, new ignition wires that they put in, is that they pull out a lot easier than the old ones. Another thing of them is they're actually, I don't know if you can see it, but they're rated for 1 kilo ohm resistance. The original ones were rated at 2 kilo ohms. You can see here it says 2 kilo ohms on the original Bosch. The new ones are 1 kilo ohm, and that's actually better. And you can see the old ones were pretty used up. Some of them, this one actually looks good. There was one that looked like it was not making proper contact, and it was a little bit burnt up from the inside. So it's actually good that I changed all of them. So anyways, let's pull the next plug, see what we get. The plugs come out with a 16 mil socket, so spark plug socket. Just put that in, make sure it is contacting the spark plug completely. These aren't even that tight on here. I know if some of these plugs haven't been changed in the lifetime of the vehicle, they actually become pretty well seized in there, and you risk stripping the block when you go to remove them. That's going to be a giant pain in the ass if that happens. So if you have plugs that are really tight, they really don't want to come out there, what you'll want to do is run the engine, get it nice and hot, get it at operating temperature, and then very quickly start removing the plugs. It will make it a lot easier, and you will avoid risking stripping the threads. I think this one is ready to come out. My socket doesn't actually have the rubber retainer inside, so what I will be using is this little magnet to carefully pull the plug, and as you can see, this one also looks brand new. So yeah, I don't think I'll be changing these. They look perfect. Yeah. Alright, so I'll put the plugs back in. When putting spark plugs in, so regardless of which engine, especially so on this engine is a bit easier because the plugs, they don't go at a high enough angle, so you can actually drop them in there and bend the electrode. But sometimes if you're not careful, you can actually do that and you will mess up the gapping, so be very careful. What I usually do is I just put them very carefully by hand, then I also tighten them by hand until I can't do it anymore, and only then I use the ratchet. This ensures that you won't mess up any threads or cross thread so mess up the electrode or cross thread the little threads on the plug. So very gently just lay it in there. It's not going to go anywhere. So this one is hand tight. Let's put the other in. On the G-wagon, actually changing the plugs is quite easy, generally speaking, compared to other vehicles that have the M113 or the M112 engines. Before, I used to have, you saw it in the channel actually in the very beginning, we used to have a CLK 320 with the M112, and on that engine it was actually quite a bit more involved to change the plugs, especially the ones in the rear, because there simply isn't enough space. So I'm kind of happy that that it's easier to do it on this vehicle. The plugs should be torqued to 28 newton meters. I don't have a torque wrench that goes this low, so I just use the Guten tight method. But that should be good enough. They're not going anywhere. Last thing you want is to over tighten any of the plugs and cause the next person to have a bad day when they go to take them out. When reinstalling the coil wires, make sure you follow what's written here. Like I said before, it's clearly written A and B, and you also have the same markings here on the ignition coils. It says here A and B, so the top one needs to go to A, so this one goes here, the bottom one goes this side. This can also mess up your ignition timing if you don't connect the wires correctly. Do not mess it enough to cause a check engine light, but the car is just not going to run properly. Make sure these are in place. These are properly in place. The old ones, the Bosch coil wires, these actually you hear a noticeable click when they go in place. These ones with these Magneti Marelli ones that I bought, you don't, but the good thing with these is it makes them easier to remove. Considering that on these engines it's you kind of need to work on them from time to time. It's better this way, I guess. So anyways, this is done and we'll continue doing something else.